The NBA, arguably more than any other professional sport, is a star-driven league where your team can go as far as your best players take you. So when players establish themselves as the cream of the crop, they're held to loftier expectations than everyone else for good reason. All-stars and borderline all-stars are expected to provide a level of consistent greatness game to game, and their teams need them at their best to accomplish their goals. So when these players come up short of these expectations, it disappoints everybody around them, and that brings us to today's video. Today we will be discussing the 7 star NBA players that so far are disappointing everybody with their play. We'll also be diving deeper into this conversation over in my Raptive community, so join us over there for even more exclusive basketball content. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first disappointing star we'll be discussing today is Ja Morant of the Memphis Grizzlies. Coming into the season, everyone pretty much understood that this was a make or break year for him and his future in Memphis. His career started so hot in his first few seasons, helping lead the Grizzlies to back-to-back 2-seed finishes in the West, accelerating their rebuild timeline, and getting them firmly in the mix amongst some stacked Western Conference competition. Every year since then, though, things have been trending in the wrong direction. It started with a suspension in 2023, then injuries started to pile up, then he started butting heads with coaches, and all the while his production was noticeably dipping and his impact on the court has progressively stopped being worth the headache. Morant's scoring output has declined for 5 years in a row now, and we've reached the point where there are no more excuses for his disappointing play. Last year he was unhappy with the system that former head coach Taylor Jenkins was running, so the organization fired Jenkins and brought in new coach Tuomas Isalo. Morant this year is playing even worse under the new coach though, and the Grizzlies currently have a record of 6-11, sinking more and more as time goes on. Morant is also having the worst year of his entire career individually, putting up just 18 points per game, shooting a horrific 35% from the field and 16% from 3, and worst of all, the team has actually performed better with him off the court, to the tune of improving by 3.9 points per 100 possessions without him out there. It's tough to navigate a situation where your franchise player is regressing fast and is also a huge distraction at times for the things that he does off the court, and because of it, there have already been a ton of trade rumors flaring up, but then the issue you have to ask yourself is, why would another team even want to trade for an asset like that when Morant is still going to be paid over $40 million for 2 more years? The Grizzlies are a team that will only go as far as Morant can take them, and from the looks of it, that means they're headed to the basement of the standings. If you agree with that sentiment, then head over to BetOnline, where the Memphis Grizzlies win total is currently set at 32.5 games, and honestly, that even seems pretty generous based on how it's looked. So if you think they might sink even further, head over there and take advantage. The next disappointing star player we'll be discussing today is Paolo Banchero of the Orlando Magic. Banchero is a former #1 overall pick in the draft and has steadily raised his game every year through the first 3 seasons. Last year, we saw him average a career-high 26 points per game. We watched him drop his career-high 50-point game, and then we watched him dominate in the playoffs, putting up his best fight possible against a strong Boston Celtics team in the first round, when he averaged just shy of 30 points a night in that series. So needless to say, he entered this season with a lot of positive momentum. The Magic made some aggressive moves in the summer to try to set themselves up for another leap, and Paolo was being looked upon to lead this group to new heights. But instead, he's lagging behind the rest of the pack, and in some ways, his performances have actually been detrimental to the team around him. Paolo's scoring output went from 26 per game last year to just 22 per game so far this year. He's shooting shooting worse from 3 than he ever has, hitting just 25% of his shots from deep. He's been way too dominant on the ball, throwing off the flow of the offense, and his shot selection can be pretty questionable sometimes. He is out injured right now, unfortunately, but the Magic were 6-6 in the games that he played in, and are now 4-2 without him, winning at a better rate in a small sample size without him, showing that they can actually function without his ball-stopping ways. He can be a dominant player when he's playing to his strengths, attacking the rim, and playing out of the post, but he insists far too often to try to create out on the perimeter and settle for low-quality looks when that has never been one of his strengths. The next disappointing star we'll be discussing today is LaMelo Ball of the Charlotte Hornets. We're now in year 6 of the LaMelo Ball era in Charlotte, and they are still a long ways away from having anything to show for it in this period. LaMelo's talent is undeniable, nobody will ever be able to dispute that, but he also has so many glaring issues that many people rightfully question regarding whether they can actually translate to leading a winning ball club. He's one of the most creative playmakers in the game with ridiculous court vision and passing talent, and his fast breaks are must-see TV, but he's an incredibly high-usage ball dominator who consistently played an inefficient brand of basketball. His defensive effort comes and goes, and most importantly, he hasn't been able to stay on the court long enough for the Hornets to build any momentum with him. The team still has no playoff appearances since he's been drafted, and he's another player who entered this year knowing it could be a make-or-break year for his future there. The way he has responded has unfortunately been by having his worst season. He still ranks near the top of the NBA in field goal attempts per game, yet he's averaging just 21 points per game, shooting 39% from the field and 28% from 3. And to top it all off, he has missed 7 of the Hornets' 17 games played so far. Charlotte is now in 12th place in the Eastern Conference, with a record of just 4-13, seemingly out of the mix for a playoff spot already, and with rookie Nipple flying out of the gate, the Hornets may look at this as the perfect time to transition to a new era of Hornets basketball without LaMelo Ball. It's just proving to be incredibly tough to build a winner with LaMelo as the primary focus, and it doesn't help that his individual production is actually regressing while he can't even stay on the court. The next star player we'll be discussing today that has been disappointing everyone so far is Zion Williamson of the New Orleans Pelicans. Speaking of immensely talented players that haven't accomplished anything significant yet and can't stay on the floor, Zion seems like the perfect follow-up after everything we just went over with LaMelo Ball. Zion Williamson came into the NBA as the #1 pick in 2019, expected to set the league on fire with more hype than we've seen a prospect garner in years, and with his combination of size, strength, speed, and explosive athleticism, he was someone that New Orleans hoped could lead them to new heights after the Anthony Davis era had just ended there. Well, it's year 7 of Zion Williamson's career now, and while he has definitely been a great player when he's been healthy, the problem has always been the fact that he's rarely ever healthy, and this season has unfortunately been no different. Starting in training camp, Zion Williamson showed up looking like a whole new man, having slimmed down a ton, emphasizing the fact that he fully committed himself to staying in the best shape of his life this summer, and because of that, people reasonably restored hope in him being able to get his career back on track. But that hope lasted just 2 games, because by game 3 this season, Williamson was already back out injured, and since that point, he has been in and out of the lineup, once again dealing with injuries. He's played in just 7 of the Pelicans' 17 games so far this year, and when he has been out there, he's been having the worst year of his entire career, scoring a career-low 21 points per game, taking a much more passive role, despite the team desperately needing an alpha to lead them. The Pelicans are currently sitting in dead last in the Western Conference standings, and they don't even own their own draft pick this year, so it's not like they're out there intentionally tanking. They just stink, and with most of their key players like Zion Williamson being in and out of the lineup and struggling in the games that they do play, it's a big reason why. The next disappointing star player we'll be discussing today is Anthony Davis of the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks have been the subject of some next-level embarrassment over the last year, and unfortunately, Anthony Davis has been caught in the middle of it. It's not his fault that he was part of the return package in one of the worst trades ever orchestrated in NBA history, but he was, and when the Mavericks shipped off Luka Doncic for Davis, they did so claiming that it was for the sake of building an immediate contender. Instead, the Mavericks' championship window immediately slammed shut, and they are now in 13th place in the Western Conference standings, with a grim future outlook. The belief was that Anthony Davis would be anchoring a top-ranked Mavericks defense, and the veteran squad around him had the talent to hang with the best in the West, but as has been a common theme today, he has barely been on the court at all. Anthony Davis has only been able to play in 5 games so far this year, because of a calf injury, and because the team could not compete without him, their season seems to have ended before it could even begin. This ultimately led to Nico Harrison getting fired as general manager, which is a move that was probably inevitable, but now the Mavericks are stuck with an old, washed-up roster, and will probably end up being huge sellers at the trade deadline, forced into a rebuild. The next disappointing star player we'll be discussing today is Jaren Jackson Jr. of the Memphis Grizzlies. We discussed his co-star Ja Morant at the beginning of this video, but we can't just let Jaren off the hook for any of the blame for the Grizzlies' disaster of a season so far. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a multiple-time All-Star and a winner of the Defensive Player of the Year award, but you would never guess if you were to tune in to Grizzlies games this season. Ja Morant may be struggling mightily to get anything going on offense, but Jaren is not exactly giving him much help either, as he's scoring just 18 points per game, down from the 22 per game that he was putting up last season. And typically, when your co-star is going through a tough stretch, it's nice to see your other go-to guy pick up some of the slack. But if anything, Jaren looks even less aggressive out there night after night. He's scoring the ball relatively efficiently, he's just not asserting himself on offense. And then on defense, he also has completely lost his edge. His blocks are way down, his defended paint percentage is up, and the Grizzlies have actually been a whopping 9.5 points worse per 100 possessions with him out there, which speaks to how unimpactful he's been this year. Jaren has never at any point in his career been a very good rebounder, but he made up for it in various other helpful ways in the past. But this season, that's just not the case, and the fact that he's a big man grabbing just 5 rebounds a night becomes a lot more concerning. The whole team looks completely out of whack right now, but neither of their supposed stars are doing anything to right the ship. And finally, the last star player we'll be discussing today that has been disappointing everyone so far is Trey Young of the Atlanta Hawks. Surprise, surprise, another star player that played poorly out of the gate and then got injured is on the list today, but there's a lot more to it than just that for Trey specifically. As many of you know, throughout the offseason, I was very high on the Hawks as a potential breakout team this season, after the strong offseason that they had, and overall, that prediction is still looking pretty good so far, with the Hawks firmly in the playoff mix right now, but their hot streak actually began after Trey Young went down with an injury, and the team was getting beaten pretty badly in Trey's minutes before that. Young has played in just 5 games so far this year, but in those games, his shot was not falling at all, hitting just 37% of his total shots and just 19% of his threes, and his teammates weren't able to find their groove with how much time Trey was spending on the ball. Since Trey Young has gone down, Jalen Johnson has stepped up and has looked like one of the best forwards in the whole league. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been handling a lot more of the scoring duties. Kristaps Porzingis has continually grown in confidence. Onyeka Okongwu has provided a lot more on both ends, and players like Vit Krejci and Muhammad Goye have been spending a lot more time on the ball, spreading their wings, providing more than just shooting. When Trey Young returns, they're going to need to find a way to reintegrate him without throwing off the rhythm that they've built together, which may be a more difficult task than some think. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these star players moving forward the rest of the season. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.